I work primarily with non-game species, and the bulk of my job is figuring out where they're occurring in the state. Anything that we don't know about their life history, we gotta fill in the gaps. How are these species and their populations doing? And what can we be doing on our end as far as management and conservation to help them thrive? Every day is different. I get loads of field time in my position. I do not feel like I go to work, and I joke that aside from the data end, I have the job of a 12-year-old. I mean, one of the first week that I was on the job, I was looking for salamanders with a flashlight, and I thought, this is what I did when I was 12.
Yeah.
I mean,
Awesome.
I get to play in the woods and contribute, and that, I mean, it's priceless.
And Lindsay was on not long ago talking about skunks, and today we're talking about rats.
So yeah, we were saying the skunk lady, but I said today she's the rat queen.
And I never thought I'd talk about rats on Wildcast, but here we are.
I never thought I'd work with rats, but here we are. They're like a big fluffy potato, with a really long furry tail, and they're just cute. And their behavior, their mannerism is really just easy. Usually when we walk up to a trap and we've got one, they're just like, here I am. I was just chowing down on these apples you put out for me. And as soon as they're down, we're weighing them, measuring tail length, measuring body length, hind foot length. We're looking them over for any signs of disease. Since this is part of a DNA study, we're taking a punch tissue sample from each ear.
Won't you take me back to Tennessee?
The award-winning Tennessee Wildcast is on the air with the latest info about hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. This year, we celebrate the men and women of the TWRA responsible for 75 years of wildlife conservation. Now make welcome your host, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thanks for watching. I'm Jason Harmon. We are on Watts Bar today, and Miss Mimi Barnes is helping me co-host.
I love it. It is a gorgeous day, and it doesn't feel like work.
Yes, it's very nice today. It's May 1st, if you're wondering, and someone's birthday today.
It is someone so special.
That's
it's someone's birthday.
Do you want to wish him a happy birthday?
I do. Happy birthday, Don King.
Don King's birthday today. Mimi's helping co-host. Don's normally here with me, but we're in Region 3 today, so Mimi's jumping in and giving Don a break, and just want to wish him a happy birthday. And when you hear this show, think about him.
Yes.
But anyway, we're excited to be here, and today we have Lindsay Shaw with us. And Lindsay was on not long ago talking about skunks, and today we're talking about rats.
So yeah, we were saying the skunk lady, but I said today she's the rat queen.
Thanks for being back with us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks for coming out here and joining us. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. I never thought I'd talk about rats on Wildcast, but here we are.
I never thought I'd work with rats, but here we are.
That's right. I know in our previous show you mentioned deer or elk. Deer
and elk.
Yeah,
were kind of my goal going through school, and I ended up in what I do now, and the rest is history.
Well, let's start there. Remind folks who you are and what you do, and we'll dive into this.
So I'm the Wildlife Surveys Manager for Region 3. I work primarily with non-game species, and the bulk of my job is figuring out where they're occurring in the state. Anything that we don't know about their life history, we gotta kind of fill in the gaps. How are these species and their populations doing? And then what can we be doing on our end as far as management and conservation to help them thrive?
Yeah, she's been out. You've had a couple spotted skunks collared.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of working out in some ways.
Yeah, it's been a tough project. I mean, it'd probably be boring if it was easy, and then we'd know everything about them. But we've had our trials.
But you're finding a few cool things out, and I have to just say one thing. Lindsay asked me to is this a friend or what? She's like, could you pluck some hair from a skunk's tail for me? And I was like, you got it, girl. I'm helping.
Yes.
Well, you all ventured out just recently, and you sent a little video to me the other day. What was that about? Was it a skunk? Was that a skunk video that you got with Lindsay, or what was that animal y'all were playing around with?
It was the spotted skunk.
Yeah. So you got close hands on and got in there with them. So that's cool to be able to do that.
Oh, so fun. But today's all about the wood. It's all about rats.
Yes.
It's all about rats.
Yeah. Oh, rats.
Oh, rats. But people do not know that we have native rats. We are always thinking about that Norway rat.
Right.
Just talk to us about the rats, Lindsay.
Well, we do have a few different species in Tennessee, and so we have our New World rats, which are the ones that are native here. The Old World rats, which kind of came over on the boats with colonists and stuff like that. That's where our Norway rat comes from. So people always think of rats as just being like larger than mice, and that's a good way to ID usually. We do have the marsh rice rat. They're not really large. The one that we're talking about today is Neotoma genus, which is the wood rats. If you've heard the term pack rat, they're also called pack rats because they tend to gather anything that they can find into these nests, which are called middens. I've seen all kinds of stuff. We saw a midden back in a cave that had like a twisted tea can, and anything that like shiny stuff.
Time for a party.
Anything they can pull in, they will. So those are native to Tennessee. And the way I describe them is like a Disney rat. So when I told my mom that I was going to be trying to catch rats, she was like horrified. She was like, "Why are you trying to catch disgusting rats?" And I was like, "No, you're thinking of like a New York City sewer rat." And that's not what we're dealing with. Like these guys, they're pretty big. I mean, they're like a big fluffy potato, with a really long furry tail. And they're just cute. And their behavior, their mannerism is really just easy. Usually when we walk up to a trap and we've got one, they're just like, "Here I am. I was just chowing down on these apples you put out for me, and what are we going to do today?"
So when people see a rat, say they have a rat in their basement or garage, or would that be our native rat, or is the Norway rat the one more likely to be associated with humans?
It's probably a brown rat, which is the Norway rat. If it's in your house, or roof rat, which by the way has the best Latin name. It is Rattus rattus.
I mean, I'll never forget it.
It's so easy. But the brown rat is typically the one that's going to be around your house. The wood rats, we have two species in Tennessee. We have the eastern and the Allegheny. And the Allegheny, we think, likes the woods and caves and kind of rock outcrops. And then the eastern's typically more of a woods rat.
Well, I had some pallets stacked up at my house one time, and I started cleaning out and doing some things, and I had one come out. So I don't know if that was a brown rat or...
So
how did you know? I mean, the tail, I guess, or is that one of the things?
The wood rat, if it's cute, if it's really cute, and I know this is not a very professional diagnostic tool, but
it works.
To me, if it's large and it's cute, it's a wood rat. If it looks like a smaller, like subway rat kind of thing with like a hairless tail and all of that, probably a brown rat.
Well, you mentioned it not being scared of you, kind of just hanging out. That was kind of how this one, it ran up into the rafters of the barn, but it kind of stayed around and looked and was curious. And
it's possible. They're really large. They have very prominent ears, a big, cute, I mean, I know I keep using that term, but they're just really
They
cute. They have a really cute face. And so I always picture them as the Disney rat because they don't look like some scary, gross rat. They look like an overgrown, cute mouse.
So where would people most likely run into them? On a hike in a wooded area?
Yeah.
Are they nocturnal, or tell us a little bit more about
primarily nocturnal.
Okay.
We've found them in old barns and stuff like that. So a lot of the places that we trap, if I can find like some ratty old barn or, like
ratty.
Broken. Yeah. No, well, I didn't intend
Pun
to
intended.
but yeah. Just kind of run down sheds, something like that.
Sounds safe.
Yeah.
It's not, but that's the best trap spot. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Wow. So I had the pleasure of joining the training of how they capture and put a wood rat to sleep. And just tell us a little bit about that training.
Yeah. So I, at the time, was in grad school and just happened to be out at the WMA where that was taking place and decided, well, I'm here, I might as well sit in on this training, but I'll never work with this species because it's not what I want to do. And it turned out I'm glad I was there because then I ended up doing it as part of my job. But basically, once we locate an area where we think there should be a wood rat, either we see evidence with a midden or, like I said, I find some old broken down barn and I think this would be a good place to trap. We try to inundate an area with traps. We use apples. Usually I throw a little peanuts in there as extra enticement because who doesn't like peanuts? And I come back first thing the next morning, so any trapped animals not sitting in there too long. If we have a rat, like I said, if it's a brown rat, they're usually losing it in the trap.
Wow.
And they're trying to bite and they just want out. If I've got a wood rat, they're just sitting there chilling. They've eaten the apple. They're happy as a clam. So after that, I've got a bucket, and I carry all my supplies in this bucket with a lid. I take all that stuff out, and before I do anything with that rat, I want to get all of my items in place. So it's like when you're cooking and you want to have all your prep ready to go. It's the same thing when we're working with these guys, because we are putting them under anesthesia. So when they're under, we want to be working as quickly as possible, so we're not keeping them under longer than necessary. So I just get all my stuff ready, trap goes in the bucket, we put some isoflurane on some cotton balls, and they go in there, lid goes on, and then that's really heavy and displaces the oxygen. So usually they'll go down pretty fast, and it just looks like they're taking a nap.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens pretty quick. I've done it with my interns each summer, and they're
You put them in the bucket? Just kidding.
depends on how they behave. But sometimes we have timeout. But yeah, these rats go to sleep, not permanently. I was telling my kids, and they were like, "You put them to sleep." I was like, "No, not. It's just
a nap.
temporarily, a temporary nap.
A little nap.
Yeah, just giving them, just a little nap." But as soon as they're down, we're simultaneously taking all these biometrics. So we're weighing them, measuring tail length, measuring body length, measuring hind foot length. We're looking them over for any signs of disease. One that can typically affect them is raccoon roundworm, which is a parasite, and is actually responsible for a fair bit of their decline. But we're trying to do all these things and get all of these measurements while monitoring heart rate and breathing, temperature, all of that.
Like the operating room.
It is, and sometimes it's just me and an intern, so we're really trying to get stuff done quickly, and we're working them up. I've done it on my tailgate. I've done it on a rock slab, under a rock outcropping. I've done it on the dirt in a very questionable barn in the middle of nowhere, and so we're trying to do all these things, and then, since this is part of a DNA study, we're taking a punch tissue sample from each ear.
Wow.
So then we've got an open wound, and we're trying to keep things sterile while we're working quickly. So that tissue is then reserved in some liquid that keeps it good till it can go off to the lab. And we give them a little, I call them ear rings, but they're just uniquely numbered ear tags, one in each ear. That way, if we trap that location again, we know if we got the same rat again, if it's a recapture or not. So that's what we're doing. And then that tissue, well, it's just wrapped up recently, but it goes to Dr. Carla Hurt at Tennessee Tech. She was doing the big DNA study. So then she's responsible for really the smart person end of things. I'm just the grunt on the ground, trying to not kill a rat. And I haven't so far.
Probably a little more than the grunt on the ground.
A little bit.
But she's doing the real brain work as far as the delineation via DNA.
Wow. So, so I have several questions, but why all this? I'm thinking, what does that back foot tell us?
Yeah, like the measurements and all that stuff. What are all this? Yeah.
Right. It's data, and I do the same thing with my skunks. And like when I had you pull the hair, for instance, we're not doing anything DNA wise with that right now. But we take all those biometrics just to get an idea of what is typical for this species.
I getcha.
Right.
So over time, you would know that. So in the future, that length of the foot could help as an identifier,
right?
Or just knowing if it changes over time.
And we know, like with some mice species, we separate species by that foot length. So it's not as much a, the only way to tell our eastern from our Allegheny wood rat, they say that there are some size differences and that there are some coat differences, but definitively it's either DNA or skull morphology. And we don't want to be out there, having to cut all their heads off and look at their dentition and going, oh, well, it was an Allegheny wood rat.
So what do we know about those two wood rats?
So they both occur in Tennessee. Across their range in general, we know that they've declined, and that's partially due to that raccoon roundworm that I told you about, and also just habitat loss. It's becoming a much more patchy distribution, and that makes it harder. You have a little population here, and a little population here, and a little population here, and that makes it hard for them to persist when there's no new gene flow or anything like that. if you picture the Allegheny wood rats range, it comes down from, you guessed it, the Alleghenies, into Tennessee and sort of the plateau to like middle Tennessee. And then in Tennessee, the eastern wood rat is on our eastern edge with North Carolina, and then like West Tennessee.
Okay.
So what Dr. Hurt wanted to know was, what is our kind of intergrade line? Are there any spots where both species are coexisting? Is there potential for hybridization and that kind of stuff?
Any preliminary results that you can share?
She actually sent out the report just a couple weeks ago, and I read it and I was like, I don't understand this DNA stuff. It's above my head. But what she mostly found out of 100 and something samples that were collected since 2021 is that we do have a few spots where we're getting both species. So that's like the Sequatchie Valley south of the plateau. There were some up in North Cumberland, and then along the French Broad over towards the Tennessee, North Carolina border. So going future directions, she would like to look at the area around Kentucky Lake to sort of figure out the western border of the Alleghenies range on that end of the state. And then any opportunity, will they hybridize? We don't know.
Yeah.
So how, go ahead,
So
Jason.
are you the only one working on this project?
No. So every person in my job in each region,
Okay.
so Chris Ogle
Cool.
is over in Region 4. We've got Mallory and Michaela in Region 2, Jesse Eakers in Region 1.
Gotcha. Okay.
They're all gathering and have been for the past couple years, these samples.
Wow.
Very cool. Yeah.
So we have a bunch of people, or 4 people, crawling around in old sheds and barns.
Yes. Yes.
Have you found so the location? You've barns, like we said, but you like you said, you did some surgery on outcropping, dirt floors, rock walls, whatever. So the habitat pretty diverse, sounds like.
It is. It is. And, we're mostly working on WMAs. So we're a little bit restricted in that we're trying to work on public land. If someone approaches me and they're like, hey, I have a ratty old barn and I've seen a big, cute Disney rat, I'll be glad to come and trap. But we are a little bit restricted. We tried to focus on areas where we thought there might be an intergrade zone. So like along the Tennessee Valley and that kind of stuff. But anything I can find. I've driven around Catoosa and I'm like, there's a rock outcrop. Let's try that. Here's this cave over here on this WMA. Let's trap this.
So have you gotten an eye for their habitat at this point after?
Somewhat. Yeah, and again, I just look for evidence that they've been there. So we like if it's growing season and we find a midden and it's got green material in it, we know it's active.
Wow.
Because they've brought fresh stuff into it. And the twisted tea, having a party. So just that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you talked a little bit about their range, but we're studying these animals and you spend that time on them. How long lived is a rat?
Just a few years,
Okay.
if that. And the females can have 3 litters a year, which is a lot. They have about 2 to 3 young per litter, and their gestation period is only a month. And then after they're born, it's only a month until those young are feeding on their own.
Born
So, yeah.
with hair?
Yeah. And they're almost ready to go.
Wow.
It's really quick.
Huh.
And they can pop them out.
Well, I would expected bigger litter sizes at least, but
Yeah.
but just a few. So that I would imagine that has impact on overall population.
Right.
Even though they can pop them out, it's just not.
Right. It's not enough.
Wow.
And especially when it's just your family in that area.
So if you're pulling them in with a sweet apple and peanuts, what would they be eating?
They'll eat just about anything: twigs, buds, fruits, nuts, acorns, just that kind of stuff.
Oh, they're not carnivorous in any way, not omnivores, but true.
No, they're
herbivores.
primarily herbivores. Yeah, and they're
Did
going to be
not
pulling
know
in whatever
that.
they can find.
Wow. I didn't know that. I love learning.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious if there's some of these tricks for mice, because I don't like those little guys.
Peanut butter is the only thing I've consistently found to bring mice.
So I ask you this question too, with spotted skunks, but why? And I'm guessing we know the answer, but I'm still going to ask it. Why care about Disney rats?
Yeah,
Why
so-
care about them?
And
They're cute.
ultimately, I revert back to the same answer from the spotted skunk episode, which is why wouldn't you care? You know, I feel like we're all in it together, and we were all put here, and everything, as much as I hate to say it, even a tick has its purpose.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. You know, but everything plays a role. And so I think if we know that something is declining, no matter how small we perceive that role to be, or whether it is individually important to us or not, you know, we should care about the grand scheme. And these things, you know, interestingly, the Allegheny is pulling organic material into caves, which are very nutrient poor. And that organic material being introduced is allowing these cave-specific invertebrates and stuff like that to thrive. So that's an interesting, very unique role that they play.
So they're helping.
And then, you know, in their spot in the great food web, wood rats are an important prey source for a lot of bigger, you know, more charismatic predators. So, you know, I think people should care about everything. That's just the hippie in me.
But those healthy ecosystems do include all of
Yes.
it, and that is the role of our agency, from the smallest, I don't know, shrew is the smallest, I don't know,
Right.
to the largest bear or elk. So that's why we have diversity biologists, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy. You think about Tennessee wildlife, and you think about hunting and fishing,
Yeah.
but it's all critters. It's
Right. And
the
we don't get
tiniest
that. We don't get the big stuff without the little stuff.
Yeah.
So how, I know you were pulled in it for your job, but what brought about interest for you? You said you happened to be on Catoosa that day, but what drew you to the species too?
Well, it was just that day on Catoosa, you know, like I said, I was in grad school. I was out there to track something. And I just thought, well, this is another tool in my wildlife toolbox if I go sit in on this training. And then, of course, I got this job, and it's part of what I'm supposed to do. And I wouldn't say I was super enthused about catching rats at first, but again, I kind of had that same thought as my mom. I was like, well, these are just going to be like weird and gross, and they aren't. They're these chill, you know, really
Curry
cool little,
potatoes.
Yeah.
really cool little critters.
Yeah, that's the part of it I think is surprising. So Dr. Groves was doing part of that training that day, and I thought, here we are as an agency collecting DNA, which is somewhat typical for us at this point, but anesthetizing a rat
Right.
in the field, and it was fascinating. So I'm grateful there are people on staff willing to do that type of work, like you, Lindsay. So thanks. So tell us, what are we hoping then overall to find out about the study? We've heard a little bit about the genetics, but what else don't we know, or should we know about this animal?
Well, we have a good idea of life history, and this recent study that Tennessee Tech has finished up, you know, has helped us figure out where these different species are occurring in the state. Then we can kind of go back and with other researchers determine, you know, what can we do better for them, you know, whether that is somehow inoculating against raccoon roundworm, connectivity with their areas so that we don't have these more and more isolated populations that are just going to succumb if, you know, one does get sick. Interestingly, Virginia and Ohio just teamed up just this past year to introduce some wood rats from Virginia to Ohio to kind of help out their gene pool essentially and try to restore these wood rats in Ohio. And I thought that was really neat.
That's the Allegheny wood rat then. Yeah. It's in state and danger there.
Right. And they are generally imperiled in our state and all the states around us.
Are they imperiled here?
It sounds like even across borders, you know, other states are working together.
Right.
You know, to
Right.
figure this out.
Yeah, it's not just Tennessee looking at them. There's other universities, other states are aware, and everybody is studying to different degrees.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of your work's on WMAs. Are some of the other states, is that on public land too, or is that working with private landowners?
Yeah, well, they'll be doing both. You know, every now and then you get lucky and you get a really good private landowner who wants to know more about what's going on their land, and you can come out and survey there. But yeah, primarily public land across the board is what state agencies are going to be working with.
But if someone does, they're like, hey, I happen to have an old rickety barn that Lindsay can crawl around.
I think you'd be surprised. I think people might want to help.
Well, I pass them on the road, you know, all the time going to wherever, and I'm like, I bet there's a wood rat in that barn.
So someone could reach out to they could reach out to their regional office and ask to speak with the diversity survey manager, or just tell them, hey, we think we have wood rats,
Right.
not just rats, but wood rats.
Yes.
And we'd be willing to let someone trap on our property to get in touch with. And one other thing, if they can get a photo, what do they do with that photo? Do they send it to you, or
they can send it in either to the regional office or to me directly, and we can usually tell from a photo if it's a wood rat or not.
okay? And I think about iNaturalist or Citizen Science out there. If they happen to have an old photo, can you all still utilize that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's a data point. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years old.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, I know that we use that feature with the spotted skunk and some other things, but I always think about that Citizen Science and how many people out there love what we love. We just happen to have committed some time to
Right,
it
right.
as professions, but so many people are willing to help. There was one other thing. Go
I was
ahead.
thinking maybe one day we'll have a wood rat in our wildlife calendar.
Wouldn't that be so cool?
Have to find somebody with a picture. Get somebody to take a picture.
Any challenges other than seeing those pockets? Any challenges that you face when you're working with this animal?
They've not been too difficult, honestly. I mean, every time that we trap and you come back and there's nothing in the traps, you're like, that's a bummer, but that's how it goes. Your trap rate's not going to be 100%. But no, they've been pretty easy. Like I said, I haven't killed any, which is good. That's always the number one mark. Don't kill the imperiled species. But they've been pretty easy to work with and really, really an interesting little critter.
That is very cool. Thanks for sharing all that.
You guys go through a lot of training and are well equipped out there in the field. I feel pretty confident y'all are taking good care of our wildlife. That's what you're there for. I mean,
We do our best.
I don't fear a dead rat.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, their well-being is primary and my data is secondary. So, like I said, we're monitoring them the whole time. If something is not right or it seems like they need a little extra help, I'm not going to worry about ear tags. I'm not going to worry about that hind foot measurement if we don't have it yet. We're just going to get them fresh air and send them on their way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that care, and I see that throughout our entire staff.
Definitely. Definitely.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask Lindsay my 2 questions that I said.
Okay, go for it.
What are the challenges in your job, generally speaking? What challenges you?
There probably is not enough time or money or manpower, especially in non-game, to really adequately cover everything that we have going on. I mean, we are so fortunate in Tennessee to be so biodiverse. But at the same time, how do we triage what we're going to work on? It's hard. So we do our best to kind of see what we've got. What could use some extra work? What do we have funding for? What do we have the manpower for? And go from there. But I'd say that's the biggest challenge. There's never enough time, enough money, enough people to cover everything and know everything.
Yeah.
And then very last question. It's our 75th anniversary, and we all love it so much. What do you love about your job?
Shoot. I mean, look around. Every day is different. I get loads of field time in my position. I do not feel like I go to work. And I joke that aside from the data end, I have the job of a 12-year-old. I mean, one of the first week that I was on the job, I was looking for salamanders with a flashlight, and I thought, this is what I did when I was 12.
Yeah.
I mean,
awesome.
I get to play in the woods and contribute, and that, I mean, it's priceless.
And it's early May. What are you doing when you're not working?
I'm outside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm outside. I'm hiking. I'm fishing. Right now I'm big on my bird list, as stuff's coming in, and so it's just I get paid to do what I love, and
awesome.
I'm extremely fortunate.
Yeah, thanks for all that, Lindsay. Thanks for being with us.
I think we all are. I think this is it's a wonderful job, and enjoy working for the citizens of the state.
Yes, exactly.
Protecting our wildlife. Well, this has been a fun show. Mimi, thank you for lining this up.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lindsay.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. This is Tennessee Wildcast. Keep coming back. Keep listening. Keep watching. Subscribe. Like us. We'll see you next time.
Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Join us as we celebrate 75 years of conservation in our great state. You can invest in Tennessee's wildlife future by purchasing a license at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.